Hey, beautiful people. This is Aaron the Pedantic, and today is the first campaign diary of my AD&D games that are going on. So, basically, I'm just going to be talking about how it went, where it looks like it's going. What did we learn? Because this is not one of those channels, unfortunately, that I can give you extreme authoritative just commandments on how the game should be run and all this kind of stuff, just because I'm still learning myself. I think that most people are. I think if you haven't been running the game that you're using for decades and decades and decades, then you're still developing. Even then, I'd say there's probably a good chance that you're still developing, because the way the game is played changes, and it's going to change, and it's going to need to change, because your tables change. So that's my personal philosophy at the moment. So yeah, I'm not coming at this from a here's how to do everything kind of thing. More of just here's what I've learned, and here's what I found interesting, and here's what I enjoyed. So we are starting with Group A. We started with Group A in the village of Hommlet. And the first thing that we did was we had everybody introduce themselves, because most of the people that were playing last night had never played together before, with a few exceptions. We had some returning players, such as Lizard Man. Uh, I think we'll just call him Lizard. We'll call him Lizard for now. We have OGGM, who's also played with Lizard before. We had Smoking Joe, the guy that played the kind of notorious magic user from the Old School Essentials game, that kind of was a little bit too chaotic for everybody else in some ways, but still managed to stay beneath the radar. We have quite a few other players that were brand new to the group and never played with me before, so didn't know exactly what to expect. I didn't know what exactly to expect from them. And so, we just kind of went around and talked about, oh, God, I forgot to mention Robbie. How could I forget to mention Robbie? So we had Robbie there. And of course, he played in the Old School Essentials game and in the DCC game. So, there were people that knew each other, but still, there were some people that were brand new, and I didn't know too terribly much about, other than the conversations that we'd had on Discord or on YouTube and that kind of thing. And it was incredibly nice. It was incredibly nice. So because basically these people start divulging, okay, so here I am. Here's what my experience with D&D has been, and here's just a little bit about my character. This whole thing was just really cool, because it turns out that basically all of the players, for the most part, have experience with AD&D, but their experience tends to be basically that they used AD&D PHB rules with what was basically the rules of BX, or something to that equivalent. And the level of experience I'm dealing with here includes people that started in as early as 77, I think was the earliest that I remember hearing. Which blows me out of the water as far as that goes. No pressure or anything, right? But they all basically said, we didn't actually use the rules from first edition as written, because we started playing before they were out, or that's just it. Just we didn't quite make sense of it, or insert other reason here. So because of that, I have to say that burden has been lifted from me a little bit. I was like, they're going to be a little bit understanding. So that was nice. As far as delving into the characters they created, what we did is, because of the way AD&D works, we had some people that rolled up paladins, and we had some people that rolled up assassins. And I said, well, these are not going to get along, because the assassins have to be evil and the paladins have to be good, and the paladins can't abide by evil. So this kind of necessitated, there's got to be some kind of split here. Something has to give. So the evil ones went into Group B, the good ones, and went into Group A, and then neutral could be in any group. It's basically how we had things go. What really surprised me is that it turns out that everybody in Group A ended up being good aligned, which has this really great symbiotic feeling now that's already starting to develop. They're talking about their characters. And in really brief sense, this is not the kind of thing that you might hear about where, well, here's what happened with my character's family, and they grew up in this kind of environment. And here are the things that they value, or anything like that. No, it was really a lot more gameable elements, I would say, things that we can make use of in those ways. We did get a little bit of interesting tidbits here and there, such as Oscar, OGGM's halfling gypsy, talking about how he is aspiring to taste all of the cheese of the land, something that he pulled back from this character that he used in the Dungeon Crawl Classics game before that, and I think in the BX game that we ran. So now I know that there is a need for gourmet cheesing in this world. So that is something that should be interesting. We'll see how that works out. But for the most part, we got to know what kind of character is this. What is their general thing about them? What is their deity was a big one that played out, because it turns out that we have paladin, and wait, we have two paladins. We have multiple paladins / clerics going on. So there's a lot of holy business in here. They're all good aligned. We have one that worships Heronius. We have one that worships Saint Cuthbert. That's the cleric worships Saint Cuthbert. We have there's just a lot of this going on. So there's going to be an interesting cooperation of these different churches, and I want to see how that's going to pan out. It's something that I already had to think about, because one of the things that I brought up before is that there is such a thing as training rules in AD&D, and I want to try it out. And so because of that, that means that you're going to need to have a cleric of higher level than you, if you're a cleric, in order to teach you stuff so you can progress to the next level. And how's that going to work exactly whenever you've got clerics of different deities? Are they going to be, is there some kind of favoritism that's employed here? And I had some interesting feedback from people. One such person basically said that they would have the players do some kind of quiz, be like, okay, well, here's a fact 1 about St. Cuthbert, fact 2, and all this kind of stuff. Have them take a quiz at the end, and then, so that way you're kind of conditioning, because the ultimate thing that the clerics are supposed to do is try to convert people and all that kind of stuff. I'm not entirely sure if that's the way I want to go. I'm not entirely sure. I may think discounts as far as training costs, which some people may cry foul, because then it's like, okay, well, now I'm getting, people are getting this kind of extreme benefit because they are a cleric, and they are a cleric that is, training at this church. And that just happens to be the church that's in the town, and that's not fair. I don't know that that's the kind of group that we have, that we would have those kinds of complaints. I really don't know. But it is something for me to consider, because you're not going to get a discount from the fighter ones unless maybe you have some kind of affinity for the fighter one. I don't know. Something to think about. But the character introductions were brief. The player introductions were longer than the character introductions, honestly. People wanted to kind of give a little bit of a sense of who they were. It was really nice. One thing that I really, really enjoyed with this is actually the first game that I have run where we mostly had people using cameras, and it makes an immense difference. Just being able to read people's facial expressions, it lifted my spirits. I don't know about them, but it lifted my spirits immensely. And one of the things that I think I could theorize it may happen is that whenever you're able to look at each other, then it's a lot harder for people to just have, it's kind of the way people treat each other online in general. Whenever it's just a name, all I see is a name and some text associated with them that I don't like, or some words that were spouted I don't like, then a lot of times people tend to be a lot uglier than they would if they're actually looking at somebody and that person is looking back at them. That's my personal belief that is how people are. And so I think that the cameras are actually going to be really useful. And we also didn't really have the problem of people talking over each other, which is something that happens quite frequently in Discord games. So this, again, cameras, awesome. We talked about my expectations for the game. If I could go back, then I may have spent more time kind of asking them what their expectations were, what their aspirations for the game were. I didn't do that. We had, as it turned out, about 6 or 7 players, 7 players, I believe. No, it was 6. I'm pretty sure it was 6 players. I can't remember. I was there. That's all I know. We had about 6 players or 7, and they, I wanted to make sure that things got moving because we are older people. We have jobs, we have responsibilities, and we're starting kind of late. 6 o'clock, 6:30 Central Standard Time. For me, but some people for them it was earlier in the afternoon. For some people, it was already getting kind of later in the evening. So I kind of knew we had this ticking clock going, and there would be just I didn't have a whole lot of time before I could get their feeling kind of sunk in about what this campaign might be. I know that the first session is in a way incredibly crucial for maybe setting the pace for the rest of the campaign. And that's why part of this is going to get a little bit more painful as I go along. But in any case, that was perhaps something that I will do in the future is get a little bit more input on what their expectations are and their aspirations are going into it. And I think instead I was stressing a lot more on let's get some kind of group cohesion here. I will say that I feel like that turned out well, but I don't know if that was me or if it's just that they're really cool guys. So, now, after we did all these introductions and I talked about what my expectations were and my aspirations for the game, which is basically that I want to try the rules as written in AD&D First Edition as much as I can put up with. So basically, I'm going to be trying all of these rules: simultaneous initiative, splitting attacks through the initiative, having the weapon versus armor type adjustments, which I know a lot of people, they really hate, and I understand why. In fact, we had a prolonged discussion about it afterwards, and there's reasons why people don't like it, and I completely understand. I'm wanting to try these things, but the moment that I feel like it's getting in the way of anytime I feel that the juice is not worth the squeeze, then it's going to have to go. It's going to have to go in favor of something that is more minimal to the group. Right now, the group and having this group flourish is my greatest priority. So that is the thing. The only thing that I'm not really wanting to budge on, and this is what I told them, is that for the campaign, what I really want them to have is I want to have a long-term campaign. Players, it would be great if they stay for as long as possible. But, if at any point somebody has to leave, that's fine. If new people come in, that's fine. What I want to have is a long-term game where we play in this campaign world and we develop all of this stuff together. And we have just this shared universe that we get to inhabit. That we grow over a period of time. And that's really what I want more than anything. And so I did share that with them, and they seemed receptive to it. We'll see, how things go along. As far as what we were doing, we started the module. The module is T1, Hommlet, the village of Hommlet, probably one of the most famous, other than it's up there. One of the most famous starting areas, starting adventures, if you will, that D&D has ever put out. And for good reason. Hommlet is fantastic stuff. But here's the thing. Hommlet is pure sandbox. And don't worry, if you're a player in my game, it's perfectly fine for you to be here listening to this, because I'm not going to divulge anything that you shouldn't be able to hear. But what I had to do is I had to think about, okay, what do I mean by pure sandbox? What I mean is the way that people often talk about sandbox play whenever they're using it derisively, and to basically say that it's not going to work. And what they're often going to say in that regard is that, well, you need to have something to do, some kind of motivation, right? Otherwise it's going to fall apart. And because of that, you need some kind of thing to get everything moving. Well, there is truth to that. So what I decided to do is, look, Hommlet as presented, you have a village, you have NPCs that are going to have different aspirations and different reactions to the party. And you have an area nearby with stuff happening that you may or may not get involved in. And a lot of times people said, no, we didn't bother. Maybe we went straight to the Temple of Elemental Evil because that's the big thing that we were really interested in. We were really interested in that rest of that stuff because it sounded cool. or maybe we just bummed off and just did whatever crazy kooky adventures that we wanted to do. That's what a lot of people have said. And if you present Hommlet exactly as it's written, then there's very good reason for that to happen, because basically all that you get is, well, if you decide to go around and talk to some villagers, then you're going to learn that there's an area nearby where stuff happened. But that's it. There's not really nothing about, well, there's treasure in them thar hills or anything like that. You might run into a particular NPC that's interested in finding some artifacts within. There are different NPCs that are interested in that stuff, but a lot of that seems to be reactive, as in once they see people going in that direction, they're going to take interest in it. So that is not really conducive to starting a game and being like, okay, let's dive into it. We have, that would be the difference between a cold start, a warm start, and a hot start, basically. Well, what I wanted here was a warm start. So to me, a cold start is whenever you have those, and these, oh my gosh, these can be incredibly egregious in my opinion. Whenever you have these games where all of the PCs have to meet each other and then figure out whether or not they are going to trust each other, and they're going to have some kind of thing that they want to do, but maybe we don't even know exactly what it is that we're going to be doing yet. So we have to learn what that is, and then we have to reason about whether or not we want to do it. And there's going to be this whole give and take thing. And then, if some of the players aren't really privy to how this usually works, then they may be a little bit more hesitant to buy into what's happening. Yes, I have actually had a player that's been like, I don't think my character would do that, that's, to me, that's the cold start. Completely undesirable. I really don't want to try that ever again. I don't have the interest. Maybe if we were doing some kind of extreme improv acting game, I might be interested in doing that, but that's not how I play D&D. So no, thank you. Not really particularly interested. A warm start is really what I was going for. A hot start to me would be, and I've done this before and it works great. You're at the dungeon. The dungeon is here. Here's your mission. Go. Basically, that is, to me, the hot start, and that is a great way to go. Of course, it is incredibly not presumptuous, I would say, because you could say presumptuous that, the players are going to be completely fine with you just throwing them into a boiling pot and saying, don't boil alive or whatever. And some might say, I would like to at least be able to take the steps into the boiling pot, myself, or something like that. But yeah, it's something that some people are going to find incredibly offensive. But to me, we show up to play the game, right? And we show up to have the challenges and things like that. I'm perfectly fine being tossed into a starting scenario as long as I'm not being dragged along for a story. That's basically where I tend to draw my lines there. So for me, the warm start was probably the best approach. And for what I did with this, I had to take, well, I didn't have to. I decided to take something that's already in the module and then add something interesting to it and go from there. See what happens. See what I could do with it. So we have this character, Elmo. It's a great name, right? Somebody made a Tickle Me Elmo joke. They have to. It's just, it's required. This character, Elmo. So if you want to avoid Hommlet spoilers because you're going to play in it someday, then stop listening now. Okay. Okay, so Elmo is a drunken lout. You see him in the inn. There's a chance that you might meet him at his father's house, well, actually where he lives, basically. It's possible that you're going to run into this guy, and if you do run into him, he's kind of a dumbass, is how he portrays himself. And I love this kind of archetype. He's basically, he makes himself look stupid and kind of incompetent, and also he's just unassuming in a lot of ways. Basically, yeah, I'd be happy to join you on your expedition as long as you give me a chainmail and a nice battle axe. And then as it turns out, he's actually a little bit more capable than he lets on. He's a ranger of pretty substantial bearing. Maybe not in terms of, Greyhawk, because in Greyhawk, we have people leading nations that are in the, 15th, 16th, 17th levels. Nothing quite of that magnitude, but still something. So Elmo, as presented, is willing to work for you if you hook him up with that gear, and that's that's pretty much what we get about Elmo. Not a whole lot more. We get that he's got some belongings, that kind of thing. Instead, what I decided to do is, well, I want to make sure that they do something whenever they first start, and then after we have something agreed upon that they do, then we can have all this other stuff seeded in that they can collectively decide what they're interested in pursuing. And I'm already starting to see the fruit of this come out. But basically, what I decided to do is give Elmo a brother. Which actually Elmo does have a brother, as written in the module. Although in this case, I actually gave the brother a more concrete existence and said that the two of them were actually out investigating the moat house together. So this kind of betrays Elmo as presented, the unassuming sort. We kind of went past that. He's not unassuming at this point. He's not going to give you exactly what the nature of what he does is, but you are going to know that there is some substance to him. He's not just some drunken buffoon. He is somebody of good repute and somebody who is wanting to do good things. And that's something that I felt like would flow well with the group as presented, because this is the Paladin party. So, what it turns out happened is they were investigating the moat house, and they were beset by some brigands who ended up capturing his brother. He narrowly himself escaped. He would have died trying to save his brother, if not for the reinforcements of these brigands that came along. And basically from that point, he says, "Look, I have these possessions," and he lays them out. He has a very nice battle axe, a very nice dagger. He's got a bag full of coins, and he says, "This is all yours if we can get my brother back." And basically, he kind of laid the expectation: if I can get him back dead or alive, that is what I'm after. I want him back alive, but if he is dead, then that's what happens. But I need people to go with me in order to make this happen. And this was something that if the players were not interested in it, then I didn't notice that they weren't interested. They seemed to be engaged in this whole thought process. And what I liked about this particular setup is this isn't saying you need to do the entire moat house. Not even close. It's definitely not saying you need to do the Temple of Elemental Evil. I'm just basically saying there's a guy that needs rescuing. And if you can rescue this guy, then you will have earned all of this. And this is a pretty decent start. And to me, I felt it was reasonable. It's something that could be accomplished in maybe 1 or 2 sessions, maybe 3 at the most. And then after that, you'll be able to go off and do whatever you're interested in, sow your royal oats and all that kind of stuff. So that is how things kind of kicked off. One of the things that I also did is I had them partake of a beverage, and or at least I asked their characters to partake of the beverage. This gave them an opportunity to just let me know, how suspicious are they as people? How much do they love to drink? We have a half orc in the party. Yes, we do have a half orc in the party, but we also have a paladin there who's constantly with him and really kind of keeping an eye on him, as it seems. And so because of that, we had this opportunity for these characters to have some kind of demonstration of who they were. And so basically, for the most part, there were some very enthusiastic drinks. There were some that were just like, okay. I mean, I'll be courteous, whatever. We had a flat refusal from the paladin of Heronius, basically saying, I'm not going to imbibe. And in this case, Elmo is not offended or anything like that. What the players didn't know, but correctly assumed, was that basically this drink had the properties of being able to tell what kind of alignment you were. Exactly how this works, they're mostly not sure, but there are some suspicions, and there are some things that some characters know. But it is something that For the sake of the player who plays the character that knows stuff, I'm not going to mention it now. Well, they do know that if you drink it, that somehow somebody is going to know what your alignment is, and they do know that to all of them it tasted like exquisite ale whenever they drank it, and that whenever the Paladin of Heronius said no, there was no hard feelings, bro. I don't feel like you're going to be a problem. So, and they at that point, Elmo is thoroughly satisfied that they are people of good repute and he can rely on them to go with him to rescue his brother. They take the remainder of the evening to try and figure out, get things sorted, get their lay of the land. We had some people enjoying the festivities in the inn. I basically presented there's some NPCs in here, and just kind of and here's what about the people that have been staying here, just the little tidbits, kind of my way of kind of like putting a little drop of rumors about, and it worked. Basically, it worked because what ended up happening is, I mentioned that there was somebody studious in the inn that they had noticed, who was basically never really coming out of his room. So what they decided to do is go check on him. And so we had the Paladin using his detect evil to try and see if there was something evil within that room, and there was nothing to be detected. Had the opportunity to talk to Spug Noise. So Spug Noise basically said, yeah, I mean, I'd be interested in going with you guys, assuming that everything that we find that is of an arcane bent is something that I can keep. And this is something that the Paladin to Heronius, Dane Valarmore, said, I can't promise that. You're going to have to work that out with everybody else. And so this kind of put me at an impasse, because I know the values of Spug Noise and what exactly he wants and what exactly he is interested in doing to make sure that he gets what he wants. And I also, know that there's an opportunity here. So you made a roll to see exactly how things were going to go, using the rules for henchmen and all those kinds of things. We had the offer presented, basically that we'll take you on for this particular endeavor. And, if you do well, then, maybe you can stay on for future things and all that kind of stuff. Well, Spug Noise has other plans for his future, but, for a quick excursion and a peek around with a lot of armed people that seem fairly capable in a dangerous place, and maybe the promise of potentially getting something out of it, that, maybe some scrolls or something like that. Yeah, he'll bite into it. So he is their first henchman that they have acquired, at least for this particular trip. So that is something that happened in the evening. Another thing that happened in the evening was the Ranger, Beak, played by Smoking Joe, the guy that played the questionable magic user of my Old School Essentials campaign, decided to take a peek around town to see what people are up to in the evening. And it was, had some rolls made to see exactly what it was that he was going to be seeing. And he happened to see something that caught his eye, something, one of those interactions, you see somebody on a regular basis and they always seem a little bit out of place, or something kind of off-putting about them, but you can't really place what it is. And he decided to follow this person, and found that they were stopping at the trading post basically whenever nightfall was coming. He happened to take note of a brooch for the cloak that had the insignia of 3 eyeballs in a pyramid type situation, and so he went and fetched the Paladin, and the Dane decided to go with him. And they went back over toward the trading post, and Dane used his abilities to try and see if he detected anything evil in the area. And after getting close enough in order to do a proper inspection, it turns out, yes, they did. And they decided to put a pin in it. It wasn't something that they were willing to, go really deep into right now, but it's something that they're thinking about for the future. So they can perhaps find out what's going to go on with that rider that came in, what's going on with the trading posts. And I'm really interested in seeing how they plan on going about that. If they plan on going through with it, we'll see. This is exactly the kind of stuff that I really was hoping for is, just having a small village atmosphere where there can be interesting comings and goings that they can get involved with, but not really forcing it on them. I hate forcing things on people. I guess that's not really a terrible quality. But basically, the writer was also described as mid-30s, scruffy, haggard, just kind of a tough-looking dude. So, he was kind of suspicious. Maybe I was laying it on thick, but, the suspicion is going to be tailed on, it looks like. So, after all of that was done, they rested for the evening because at this point, Elmo was already a little bit winded from everything that had happened earlier in the day and, trying to round people up and get everything ready. So they decided to take off, to set off in the morning. It's just too dangerous to set off in the evening. And before setting off, interestingly, Oscar, the guy, OGGM's character, decided to go and inquire as to nets. He wanted to purchase nets, and the reason for this is that whenever they were asking about the area, that Elmo kind of had described around the moat house, I used the word marshy at one point as an adjective, and so this led Oscar to say, well, if there's a marsh around, then I need to get me some frog nets. I need to try and get some frog nets. And so then it's just, all right, well, what exactly size frogs are you interested in catching? And, so he ended up buying a frog net for little frogs and a frog net for really big frogs. And that was something that, for those who know, so then they finally set off. By this point, we had been playing for some time. We had some neat little conversations. Nothing too terribly intense. Like inter-party character voice communications or anything like that. Mostly question and answer, trying to figure out some things, and then just a few kooky little things happening. So, and just getting their purchases in order, getting their formation in line. Basically, we have the party composition, and I guess I should have talked about this before. There is a ranger, there are a couple clerics, there is a paladin, there may be two paladins, there's an elven fighter magic user, and there is the thief. And there may be some more, and if there are more, there's the fighter, of course, the half-orc fighter. Yes, couldn't forget him. So pretty solid, balanced party. There's a lot of things covered there, a lot of bases covered. With them, they also are, Elmo is going to make sure that his brother is rescued, so he's with them as well, and so is Spugnoise, the sage's assistant, who is probably more useful to them as being a purveyor of unexpected rest, if you want to call it that. He make them go sleepy one time per day. So that was the setup. And so we have indoors, they decided that they're going to have the thief, the halfling thief, go up in the front and be their sneaky boy. Whenever they are outdoors, they're going to have their half-elven ranger be the one who is taking the lead. And so they were going along, and I basically described the moat house in the best manner I could, which was still kind of poor, but I pulled it off. I feel like I pulled it off okay. The key thing that I wanted to get across is you have a drawbridge that is collapsed, but it's still useful. You can still use it to get into this place. You have a tower to the left of the drawbridge. You have these ponds that are right by the road around the drawbridge. You've got these large bushes on the other side flanking you as you're going in that direction. And you notice that there are all these walls that have crumbled down, that they seem traversable, but very risky in that way. It's very likely that you would end up twisting your leg, getting hurt. It's very possible that something like that could happen. But I wanted to make sure that they knew that there was more than one way to get into this beast. And, they did what they did to try and extract as much information from Elmo as possible, which was the smart move, and which was something I had to consider, because I had to consider how far in did they get to this place before they were beset by these brigands. And just for this to work properly, I had to think about, well, where are they going to be typically looking for people? Where are the lookouts going to be? Where would be a good place, to get ambushed if you knew people were coming and all this kind of stuff. And so basically the way he described it is that there is this enormous courtyard that you can go into once you go through the doors. And there are these enormous steps and then some more doors. He said that basically you can tell that the stories up above, they look real smashed in and dilapidated. It doesn't look like they're traversable. So there is a second story to the place, but it doesn't look like there's much that you can get into. And he said that he couldn't get any further than that because that's whenever things started going sour. But whenever he was asked about if there's anything that he was worried about, the only thing that I would think that people would really put their eye on is, that they're in that tower seemed to be these slots where people could shoot arrows from, and that would be a really good spot, to post somebody to look out or whatever. So they were cautious on their way in, and this was good. It was good that they were cautious because what they did not know, but I knew, and people who are familiar with the module knew, there are some enormous frogs that are hiding in the ponds nearby. And those things have a 4 in 6 chance of surprising your party, which is not a good thing, right? Now, things got a little bit hairy from this point. This is whenever you guys listening to me, you might start being like, I question your validity as a referee, Aaron. I don't know if you are worthy of the title. This is when that kind of stuff is probably going to start coming out, and that's fine. Like I said, I always presented myself as somebody who has learned some things and wants to share them, but I'm not somebody who can tell you exactly that I'm the best or anything like that. Not even close. So what happened is the ranger reminded me that well, let me start with this. Because of the fact that they were watching the pond, they quite explicitly said that they were looking around in that direction. Because of that, I said, there's no chance for surprise then. It's not a question of whether you were surprised. In my mind, there really wasn't going to be any question of whether they were surprised. Although in the moment, I wasn't articulating it very well, because then the guy that plays the ranger said, well, I have a 50% chance of surprising them. And then, basically I was like, you do? Indeed. So I had to think about, well, how am I going to arbitrate that in this particular situation? Is it just that, anytime that they run into people that I'm going to be, rolling that 2d6, because to me, or that 3 in 6 chance, because to me, that is going to be entirely dependent on the situation. And it's just, if there is a question as to whether or not people can be surprised, that it's going to come up. And I think that is still the way that I'm going to go about things, generally speaking. In this case, because of the way that we had discussed things and the fact that I hadn't asked if he was leading the pack or anything like that by any considerable margins, then there was that, to me, there was a doubt as to whether or not he would be able to surprise anyone with this entourage of other people heading off in that direction. Looking back at it, I probably would have given him the chance to surprise the frogs, because of the simple fact that they were probably, they were being cautious. They were not making a lot of noise. They started being fairly quiet, and it's not a loud road, and they're, he's not a loud guy necessarily. So to me, I feel like that should have been reason for me to allow it. But at the time I was like, I don't see it personally. So we're going to go ahead and roll this thing. And so that was the first thing that, had me already thinking, oh God, that's an interesting thing that I'm trying to adjudicate right here. Whenever we got into the fight, because at that point we have these enormous frogs, they are hungry, and they think that they could use some man meat, the non-sexual variety. So they are going to be doing their attacks. The party is going to be doing some things. We roll initiative. The party it succeeds in the initiative. And this was the moment whenever all of the reading that I've done, all of the preparation I've done to try and be ready for the moment that initiative is rolled and we're doing combat, and me feeling competent in what I'm doing, running this combat came crashing down. And I remembered what it was like to be new with a system again, in a way that it didn't feel for me when I went to BX, because BX is so simple. There's just not a whole lot to it. Most of the time it's just like, well, which way am I going to rule in this situation? More so than, do I understand the procedure and how do I implement the procedure with all of these things into consideration? Well, so in this case, I stumbled like somebody, I don't know, carrying a bag of bricks on a beach ball. I don't know. I stumbled. And so basically what happened is, they won their initiative. They were taking some shots, but I knew that with rate of fire, that means that, they're going to have one shot now, then one shot at the end of the round. Well, how's that going to work whenever these frogs are basically about to hop? Is the moment that they get the chance, they're going to hop over to you and, just try and bash the ever-loving hell out of you. And then you're going to take your shots after they're in your face now, kind of thing. And, this brings in the granularity of AD&D's movement, because technically you don't move all at once. It's not like there's just one segment you're here and the next segment you're there. It's basically, it's a fluid thing that is happening. If you have a 9-inch movement, so you're able to basically in a full round go 90 feet or 90 yards if you're outside in the wilderness, then you are going 9 feet or 9 yards per segment. So it's this very incremental movement that's happening. So then I'm just caught up with this. Can I get there in that many segments? And is before that thing's going to happen. And then but by that point they're going to be in their face, so that they get to take a second shot. And if not, then it doesn't sound kind of weird that I'm saying that they can't take a second shot, because that sounds kind of arbitrary. I mean, yeah, they're in their face, so it makes them more vulnerable to attacks. I think if they persisted in taking a shot, and it probably wouldn't be as good of a shot. But yeah, I feel like they also really probably wouldn't miss very likely, and et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, so that's what my brain started doing. And so I'm pretty sure that on the camera to them, I just looked like I was dead inside. And so kudos to you fine gentlemen for putting up with me, because that was not the last shenanigan. Basically, I was like, okay, so yeah, this happens. And that's not even the worst part. The other thing is that we were doing theater of the mind. And because of that, whenever we were engaging them, I was like, okay, we have this formation, but they were just attacked from the right side. So now this formation that way. And, we have some people that are taking shots. And so, blah, 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 how is this formation going to stack up with all these people coming in? And eventually I just got to a point where I said, fuck it. I'm just going to roll randomly to determine who gets engaged with who. And we'll just go from there, basically. It worked out from there. But again, it was another thing that kind of froze me up. And the thing that I don't like about that kind of random determination, whenever you aren't dealing with just this mass combat, is that then there is kind of a negation of any kind of player input that is not necessarily a good thing. And again, juice worth the squeeze. I was talking before about how, there is a verisimilitude aspect that I appreciate with players not necessarily being able to select exactly who it is that they're engaging with out of a whole mass of enemies. But at the same time, is it going to be worthwhile to have that? When instead we could have them make those decisions for themselves. I'm not really sure where I've landed on that, but in any case, I used the random determination. They got engaged. The volley of blows commenced. And then in the second round, we ended up with simultaneous initiative, which fucked me again because, again, I have read the thing and I had a pretty good idea of how it's supposed to work. But then I was like, wait a minute. Weapon speed factor factors in. But what is the weapon speed factor of a monster that is basically just a giant frog? What is its weapon speed factor? And if you ask people on the internet, some people will say, well, you treat it like this. You treat it like this. Well, actually, I ended up reading it after. But Well, actually, it basically just says that it's only for whenever both groups are using weapons. So if they're not using weapons, there's no weapon speed factor, and it just happens simultaneously. But I froze up because I hadn't done it before, and I wasn't confident with myself with it. And so, yeah. So I mean, we made it work. It worked out. There was a trading of blows. There was some tremendous damage dealt. There is some, basically the ranger took a pretty decent bit of punishment. If he were a magic user, we'll just say that he would be dead. But because he's a ranger and they start with an absurd amount of hit points, he's okay. The paladin took a hit or two, but they very very uh, valiantly destroyed these evil frogs, chopped them to bits, and happened to discover an amethyst buried within them. So good old the good old positioning thing became a quandary. The simultaneous initiative, and then how that plays out, the splitting of attacks, the Rangers surprise, just all kinds of things came in, and that just reminded me what it's like to not know exactly what I'm doing, whatever I'm running a combat. And that is a humbling feeling. Fortunately, everybody seemed to be pretty cool with it. They seemed to be very understanding. And I feel like everything was going so well before that, that having that moment towards the end of the session didn't negate it. And it was especially even better, I feel like, because basically at that point, after the combat was finished, and by the way, Spug Noise is almost dead at this point already. He is almost dead. Who knows if he's going to continue going along. I'm gonna have to do a morale check for him, because he's in a rough situation. But whenever we pick up next time, they're going to be finally heading into the place and going from there. But what we did is we ended the session, and I had a chance to speak with the players and get their just kind of cool down and just talk about stuff. We only played for, I guess, about 3 hours, 3 hours of actual play time. And that's really what we had set out for. It was actually a little bit less than 3 hours. That's pretty much what we had set out for. But so it still felt kind of short, I think, because of all the introductions and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it was better than to continue and get into more potential combat with me still kind of feeling a little bit shaky, which by the time the next one rolls around, which will be in 2 weeks, because next week we're doing Group B with their start in Dark Shelf. By the time the Group A starts again, and they are entering the Moat House, then I'm going to be a lot better by then. I'm going to have a lot more resolve, a lot more confidence. I'm not going to be deflated by me trying to wrestle with these fucking rules. It's going to be better. This was the worst it's going to get. Typically speaking, there are going to be moments that are going to be rough, but whenever you're struggling with just basic initiative and all that kind of stuff, and positioning, it's kind of rough. So what am I doing to solve these things? For the positioning, we're using Owlbear Rodeo. So we have the formation, we have the characters put on these things on Owlbear Rodeo. And so now all I have to do is I have to say, okay, so we're entering a combat. Let's hop on Owlbear Rodeo. And I can just put down NPC, and I can just put down labels for them, and then I can move them, and everybody's going to know who's engaged with who, and it'll be a million times easier to track. So that is going to solve that. Whenever it comes to the initiative stuff, and like having the split attacks and all that, I'm going to continue trying it for the time being. But if it gets to a point where I feel like the way that this stuff pans out, if those desired effects, are they worth us having to think a lot about, you get this attack off, but I need to remember that you can get another attack off at the end of the round. But they may be able to stop you from doing that. So, it's sometimes at a certain point, maybe it's better for me to just say, actually, your rate of fire is 2, just go ahead and fire 2 shots and we'll be done with it. That's the question. How much of this am I willing to put up with in order to get what I desire out of it? Same thing with weapon versus armor type. Is having to look at the chart every time, is that something that I want to do? Is that something that's going to give us the desired effect? Some people say, well, I'm not really a fan. I really would prefer not to use it. And I kind of feel like, well, let's try it for maybe a session or two. And then maybe we'll drop it like a ton of hammers. If it just seems that bad, we'll just drop it and never pick it up again. If I ever want to incorporate it, I'll probably come up with my own way of doing it, and we'll figure it out from there. To me, the essence of AD&D that I'm wanting to capture isn't the I'm running it exactly as it's written. By golly, that's who I am, because it's the noble thing to do. Instead, it is basically, are we able to create the kind of campaign atmosphere that is presented in the Dungeon Master's Guide? Because that's what I'm really interested in a lot of ways. I can't do all of it because I'm not Gary Gygax. I don't have people coming to my house every night to play the game. I have another full-time job. And most other people I know have, full-time jobs or part-time jobs or lives and, stuff like that they need to do. So I'm not going to be able to pull things off quite like Gary Gygax could. And to expect that is kind of silly. It's for me whenever I'm retired, perhaps. Maybe I can pull it off then. But until then, which I don't know if I'll ever get to retire. So until then, I'm going to be making do with what I can. So they ended the session getting a grand total of 44 experience points each. Good God, boys, we are not even close to level 2, especially for the fighter magic user. Oh my God, that is going to take a long time. So 44 XP and a lousy amethyst, and Spug Noise is almost dead, but by golly, we're moving in the right direction. So I'm really excited to see what's going to happen next time. We had a great discussion with the players that stuck around after the game. And, these guys are awesome. I'm really looking forward to playing with these guys. I hope that they can stick around for a long time. I'm just going to enjoy it while it lasts, because I know that games fall apart, but I just want to say that this is very promising. These players are very, they work together well already. I can see that turning. People have an idea, they throw an idea out there, somebody else adds to the idea or says, well, maybe we should consider this, and then they work that out, and it seems to be working in a good direction. They just all seem to be awesome players, and so I'm incredibly enthusiastic about this game, and I don't even feel like I deserve the credit for how things transpired, because all I did was say, who wants to play? These guys showed up, and here we just happen to have a crew that's really awesome. So I'm lucky, I guess. I don't know. We'll see what happens. If nothing else, I had a great session. So I'm looking forward to the next one. Until then, you can wait to hear about the Campaign Diary 2, which will actually be B1, which is going to be the character starting in Dark Shelf. And that's going to be our slightly more edgy party. So we'll see how that goes. As of right now, I'm trying to keep this spoiler free so that the players can partake of listening so that they can get an idea of how I interpreted the events. But maybe at some point I might tell them, you need to stop listening because there are some things that I want to tell people about the campaign that's going on that you can't know. So I don't know if I'm going to do that, but we'll see. In any case, that's it for me today. Y'all take it easy. You're beautiful, amazing people. And if you stuck around this long, then you're an angel. I don't know how you do it. So peace out.